Let's look on some rendering properties. For this, I will create sphere, simple materials, we'll set cameras. Okay, and let's create maybe one more sphere somewhere right here on the side. Okay, to access render properties, we can go to the edit render options, or we can also just go to camera this and right click. If we left click, we'll start render. Right click will open the render options, so we can also access through the main camera properties this way. Right on the options, let's go very fast through all of them and look on some details of them. You'll notice right here we have it render quality. That is by default from the worst one to best, from the less time consuming to most time consuming. Your render quality also will depend on what type of lighting you selected inside your atmosphere editor. So OpenGL is simple ones. Also you can control quality boost based on your video card. By default preview, probably the most when you work you will use this one as a preview, but when you render you want to list used as final because it will quite be differential quality between this. The higher quality, the next step you can see in broadcast. The difference between final and broadcast. In broadcast you can apply motion blur to this. When you use superior, you can just look right here. We already changed quality. Again, you can see the quality increasing. You can specify this quality by going in general edit of the quality, and we'll look in a second for those. Superior, ultra, and you can also use user settings. This is totally customized, and you can preload it or save it them if you've done before. Eventually, when you start very familiar and understand how it works, you probably will have your own presettings for the fast render or a best render, so it's up to you. But on the beginning, I do recommend use the presets, the kind of fast and optimized ways used. Again, at least if you do your work, use final or super or ultra for still images, or broadcast as minimum for the motion, so you have some motion blur if it's your desire. You maybe want to do motion blur after in like After Effects effect. On that case, you want to disable it. Okay, so right here we have the render quality preset. And next we also have render quality right here, one big box you can notice, and this is customizable options. So let's click user settings and look on them faster. Apply materials, so materials will apply on the object, or materials will be ignored if you uncheck. Enable subrays, what is happening when it's light going to the reflection, or other than it's bounce it and it's create subrays, and it's create on specific amount. For example, if we look right here, you can see the maximum trace rate is 5 and total maximum reflection. So sometimes what's happening, if you look and you maybe see dots, black dots with some reflection, or maybe some when like indoors rendering, when you have it lights maybe bouncing from some reflective, you will have a dark dots. It's the reason why, because it's already reflected more than 5, maybe 6 times, and that time pixels dissipate, so it's stop rendering. You want to increase the max rendering as well. If you, for example, have high reflective water and you have some problems there, you want to increase it. This will increase speed, but also will give you better quality. In many cases 5 is just fine and work very well. Next you have it Supersampling. It is increased with some shadows and reflections. By default, again, if you check, it's give it best quality as well as a blur, transparency effect, for example, on a water or glass. So you want to enable this. Let's click on a blur. By default, you're using fast, but you have it as well additional effects. And again, if you want better quality, you probably want to go to the hybrid or with the other ones, but they will increase quality as well. It's your number of phases. The higher, the better quality, but it will get more passes, so you will start losing time. I mean, spend more and more time on the rendering, but again, it will increase quality and transparency. If, for example, you work with a crystal and it's your mainly effect to have very nice properly lighting passing through all this transparency. You probably want to increase quality and be sure those options enable motion blur. This is important if you do animations and you want to have this motion blur in animations. For the still images, it will give you effect as long you enable animation for your object. For example, if I have it my sphere right here, I'll add keyframe, move it, add another keyframe, and will render on the middle. It will add motion blur to this, but it's probably not the best way to do it for the still images. Mostly this is needed for animation. We have it optimized volumetric lights and last render pass. This is work very well if you want to save time, but again, if you need it a little bit more precision, so you want to disable this. Physical accuracy of the acoustic, again, will increase all of these options that by checking they will increase quality and increase render time. Force used reflection map if necessary, another case will precache it. Ignore indirect lighting on a plans. This is kind of nice options when you have it with soft shadows. You probably want enable this, it will perform a little bit better. Otherwise you want to check advanced effect quality. So right here we have options. First, it will apply mostly with ecosystem and the trees. So optimize for the light plants. You can open and customizing as well. We have a render tutorial explaining and showing you example on a bucket size. The smaller it is better, the higher the depend on accuracy on a sampling, but overall it's very simple. The better is slower, the faster is faster, but less quality. So you always need balance between this. You also can enable show sampling when you start rendering with the color, so you will see dots where sampling was performed, just help you. And of course on the volumetric you can increase better quality or worse. It depends if you see grayness kind of appearing on the volumetric. So let's disable this one. Photon map, this is probably in some cases you want to use it. For example, this is going for the radiosity for the map, and if you start having like area lighting effect and you will see some grains, you probably want to increase some of the amount of rays or how many times they bounce inside here. So going inside, and this one more Gaussic work for the as well for reflection and water and some other effect. Same things, mostly default will work just fine, but if you see a little bit more grainy or dark dots on specific, you probably want to go inside and increase or amount of the photon trace level, maybe pop up on this. If you do this, you probably want to work a little bit with the decay percent increasing or decreasing, and also the photon gathering. So these is options, mostly increasing quality from default, but again it will increase quite a bit time of render. So also you can specify and let Vue to customize all those settings, but simply move from faster to better settings. And we will optimize other settings that we saw before to give you better performance this way. Next option right here below we have it anti-aliasing. It's enabled for the object texture. In some cases people say the Vue may not render this sharp line, so you want to go inside and modify it. And mostly you want to go inside anti-aliasing and enable effect here as well. Okay, so let me preview. You can increase threshold and minimum and maximum. It's not guarantee how many for example minimum how many buckets take between this range, but for the sampling for the sub-ray pixels. Same things applying to the texture filtering, texture anti-aliasing, and as well as how many sub-rays it will calculate. Again, it doesn't mean it's always will do, it's up to this value and or minimum value. As well, you can just simply go with the quality threshold. Again, the better is take longer time, so it's almost every time we'll apply to this. Okay, next let's look on a bit on light. We have it render, and this is actually when we start using external, internal. render farm or other options, or if you want render node. And we'll kind of check this in our setup render nodes tutorial. As well, we'll check on some external render or using render farms as well options. So right here where you can specify if you want external, you can also enable some nodes. Okay, let me disable. Or you can go and go directly from the node network if you need it. Okay, so that's right here. Render destinations, main menu by default. Very often I use it to render to screen because I would like to render pop-up and it's on screen. Next we'll have the render off screen, so if you want to perform additional options, if you want automatically save on the disks with aftersave. This is if you options kind of needed if you work, for example, with very large dynamic ecosystem populations. Maybe something happened on this case, it will save progress. You can go back and resume render on the place of last saving of this. So it's kind of nice about that options. What do you want to render here? Specify more advanced options. Example, if you wanted to render any specific layers, any specific objects. Also, if you want to render lights, automatic search, and mostly important, enable gbuffer or multipass. So let's check those ones and we'll open menu. You notice on your left you'll have a gbuffer options where you can render anything from z-depth motions to other one transparency. This is if you work with like After Effects or other ones, you want to concentrate more on these options. As well, save the format for the gbuffer on the disk. On your right side, this is more related to the still kind of images. Again, this is not necessary all the way because most time when I render animation to process, I will render as a set of still images. But in this case, you can specify what you want to save as the layers. And for example, right here, save PSD. One thing to just to warn, if you select everything, more time it will be more than 100 or 99 layers. And Photoshop CS5 and earliest, they will have problems with those amount of layers. So they only maximal out, I think it's 99 layers. So if you have too many, some layers won't be saved because limitation of PSD format. You also in this case can go and just select separate files. So in this case, if you have it more than that, it will save just them separately and its own files itself. But again, right here you can notice you have your render options for the atmosphere shadows all separately, extra components, z-depth, what we had before in other ones, and also the object material layers, and if we have additional layers, it will be displayed there. Okay, so this is kind of important options if you render for the post-production. We also have a diagnostic buffer which will overlay and enable relighting. Relighting is kind of nice tool. I don't know if you will use it often, but if you have multiple light sources, let me actually show you. So let's go select right here. We'll enable render to screen, and I'm just going to place a few light sources. Okay, so let's go render. And I'm rendering in preview mode for the tutorial, so it's kind of fast. It's render, you notice right here, I have the relighting options now enabled. And this way it's helped me a lot, so I can go inside and modify all the light sources to see which one reset in the way I want it. Also, if I needed to go ahead and modify specific coloring effect. Okay, let me enable fully interactive so I can preview. And again, if I done, I can apply this so my lightings will apply directly to this point. On this case with relighting, you can place an image and slowly adjust some effect without re-rendering over and over. So this is kind of very useful type options. Okay, so again, this is kind of relighting. So what we have right here, it will increase a little bit time of render, not significantly. So if you think you will need it to readjust lighting afterwards, I do recommend be sure this option is enabled for you. So we have Antialiasing, indirect lighting. So what's happening if you know your indirect lighting won't change, you probably want to enable, and it's when you render, it is pre-rendered this black screen, so it's render once, and if you do a motion, it's one render, it will keep it. Sometimes it's very nice to use. If you think it's indirect lighting will change it significantly, you want to uncheck, so it will take longer to render, but it is increase the quality. Picture resolution, we look on some before, so you can see we have a lot of presets here that allow you to select, included free user defined, so you can preset what you wanted on the size without linking. Okay, or we can actually kind of lock them together on specific resolution if we need it, custom resolution, and so the bulb will be calculating on that amount. We also have it units in pixels, and we have it DPI. If you render to the screen, it always will be 72. So this will be more important when you render and save to the disk directly. We also have an information strip. Sometimes you see on the bottom it's add black strip with the information that you selected, or if you don't need it, you can just disable it more as debugging information. Similar as in the camera, it's have a panoramic view, spherical render, so you can modify it what degree and if you want it. This is very useful when you render HDRI, and View is always render as HDRI, and you have it when you save, you have a different option, save as different format. You also can render specific areas. You can select areas render from here, or you also can go inside options, like for example right here, select render area and just select specific area to render. This is very useful when you start, for example, working with a large scenery and you want to look on specific details, so you can isolate those details. However, right here checking it's not necessary, you need to go and kind of discard rendering from your menu, so it's well when showing. As well, you can select render areas just directly by enable and enable positions and size if you need it. Okay, increasing the render block. Memory optimization, this is needed for the a little bit older camera video cards, or if your video card, for example, have some problem with caching, you can reset it. I do recommend have this enabled for ATI video card. I noticed personally they have a little bit more effect by just dumping clear data before. So if you use the ATI video card, just enable this and it will save you some, prevent from some mishappenings. So we also have it information that beep is completed, or if render exceeded some time, so it kind of help you to notify what's going on with your system. Next, resume render. If you was on a middle render, you interrupt, you continue this way. As well, if you render image, you interrupt, you save your image, and when you save, you specify a one save health image, loaded another scenery, do something, come back. This way you can still resume render if the render was saved on a disk. So it's kind of very nice options. Overall, this is our render options. The best way with them, if you start using, just explore different options or check other tutorials about advanced render options with View. Thank you for watching this tutorial from Geekatplay Studio.